Coming to you live from Radio Cayman Studio.
For the record.
For the record. Hear from your government officials, independents, and the opposition on issues that matter to you. The record. Engage in an open dialogue between residents and lawmakers.
For the record.
The record. Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record. And now, your host, Orit Connor.
Good morning and welcome to For the Record. Today is Monday, the 23rd day of October 2017. I trust that everyone had an enjoyable weekend, and we're back in the studio here this Monday morning. I want to thank you, our listening and viewing audience, for allowing Radio Cayman and by extension For the Record into your homes, into your vehicles as you traverse the busy roads of the Cayman Islands, into your places of work, whether it be an office cubicle or if you're working in the outdoors. For the Record is a show produced by the staff and management of Radio Cayman, and it is geared towards keeping you abreast of issues as they arise and play out on the local, regional, and international scene. I am your host, Orit Connor, my two co-hosts, Ms. Teresa Pitcairn and Dr. Steve McField, and you're welcome to join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 7:30 a.m. until 9:30 a.m. During those periods, our phone lines are always open. There's always someone there waiting to take your calls. When she's not on vacation, it is usually that beautiful radio voice of Miss Susan Watson. You can call us on our toll-free number provided courtesy of Flow. That toll-free number is 1-800-534-8255. You can also call us on 949-8037 and 949-6990. Of course, if you don't like to talk on the telephone, you can email us at For the Record. That is one word, For the Record, at candw.ky. This morning, we have a full house in our studio. Not a full house like when you're playing poker. Not a full house like when you're playing poker, but we have, we have 6. You normally need 5 for poker for a full house. 3 of one kind and 2 of the other. So it is really our pleasure to have in the studio with us this morning, and I'm changing the format a little bit in terms of introduction because we want to spend as much time as we can on this particular topic this morning. It is not political, it is information that is being disseminated to you, our listening and our viewing audience, because it is of extreme importance to you. So it is our pleasure to have in the studio with us this morning Mr. Charles Clifford, who is the Collector of Customs. We also have with us Mr. Kevin Walton, who is the Deputy Collector of Customs, and he is in charge of revenue collection. That's his portfolio. We also have Mr. Michael Godfrey, who has responsibility for tariff compliance. And last but not least, Mr. Jose Montero. He is the IT and business manager within the Customs Department. And of course, we know how important the Customs Department is in terms of border protection, in terms of revenue collection for the Cayman Islands as well. I'm sure it is one of the top revenue collectors for the Cayman Islands government, so that tells you how important the work that is performed by the Customs Department. So without any further ado, this morning, I'd like to say good morning to the collector, Mr. Charles Clifford, and his crew. Mr. Clifford, good morning, and I will give you an opportunity to again introduce your staff to our listening and viewing audience.
Well, good morning, Mr. Connor. Good morning, Dr. McField. Good morning, Ms. Teresa. And good morning to the listening audience. You've already introduced the team, but just to say again that I'm happy to be joined this morning by Deputy Collector Kevin Walton, by our statistician, Mr. Michael Godfrey, and by our IT business analyst, Mr. Jose Montero Jr. We're certainly happy to also say good morning to all your listeners, as I said, and and the viewing audience. We're here this morning, Mr. Connor, to talk about the customs modernization plan and our transition from the existing IT platforms that we're using to a new IT platform. You might remember when I was on the program last, we spoke about some of the customer service issues that we've been having. Some of the things that was one of the things that came to my immediate attention when I took over as the head of customs, that we had all of these significant customer service issues, particularly with respect to our collection section. Now, I want to say from the beginning that these issues are not the result of our customs officers not doing their jobs. We have very hard-working and dedicated customs officers that come to work every day, do their best, work really hard in order to serve people well. But we also know that the IT platforms that we've been using are essentially the problem with the customer service issues and with the delays that we've been having at our counters. So we know that we had to do something about that. The truth of the matter is that the one that we're using now, government had made a substantial investment in that, so we had an obligation to try to make that work, and we've tried many things, but we ultimately reached the conclusion that we needed to transition to a more efficient IT platform, and so that's what we're doing, and that's one of the things that we're going to focus on this morning. But in preparation for that, we had to look at our business processes, so we've made some improvements there, and the other members of the team will get an opportunity to weigh in on these issues shortly. I don't want to dominate this morning because, as you've indicated and as I've indicated, we have other staff members here that need to make their contributions. But if we look at the primary reasons why we're doing this, I mentioned customer service already and the need to improve that. But we also need to look at other issues such as the security of our IT platform. The one that we're using now isn't owned by us, so we don't have the level of control that we should have. Mm-hmm. And so when we examine things like cybersecurity, as I said, we understand that we need to have control of our IT platform. And so by going this route into this particular transition, we are going to have control over the system, more control, I should say, the ability to make adjustments as we go along. But as we make this transition, any change is going to be difficult, and it will take some getting used to. So we want to ask our customers to be patient with us as we make this transition. There's going to be a need for all importers to register, and that isn't anything that's new. They had to register under the current system as well. Okay. The difference now is that we're in a different era of compliance. We have to look at various things, anti-money laundering strategies and terrorist financing strategies. So we, like many of the financial institutions in Cayman, need to know our customers better. And so we're going to have to go through that process. And some people might say, well, why can't you just simply take the registrations from the old system and move them into the new one? Well, you remember I spoke earlier about the control issues and the fact that we don't have full control of the system that we're using now. Right. So that's one of the problems with making that sort of migrating that data from one system to the next. The other thing is that we need to raise the level of compliance. Under the current registration system, importers didn't need to produce certain documents, for instance, in order to register. But we're going to need them to do that now. The good thing about it, though, is that once you register one time, you won't need to register again. And this platform is moving to the point where once you get that registration behind you and you're going to be importing goods, you will ultimately be able to do all your declarations online, either from the comfort of your own home or from the comfort of your office, and simply wait on an email from customs to tell you that your goods have either been released so you can come and pay for them and collect them, or that they've been selected for inspection so you need to come to deal with that aspect.
Now, is this if you're a casual importer as well, or for those established
all
in
importers,
the business? All importers.
All importers, right. So that's what needs to be done. But the idea is that you won't have to be sitting in the customs hall for hours and hours waiting for your paperwork to be processed. Everything is going to be essentially done in the system, so your documents will be scanned into the system. We're ultimately moving towards a paperless environment. And so, as I said, you won't have to sit in the hall for hours. You can simply make your declarations online and wait for us to notify you that your goods have been cleared. And you can come and collect them. Now, this is a phased approach and an incremental process. So people may wonder, well, are we going to ultimately move to online payments? The answer to that is yes. We're just not at that point yet. But at some point down the road, and Deputy Collector Walton will speak to that issue, you will be able to make your payments online. And so the only other step that you would have to take after that is to come and collect your goods, or to deal with the inspection if they've been selected for inspection. We were having a casual discussion before we went on air about the change in approach. Customs has traditionally used what we call the gatekeeper's approach, where we check everything and everyone coming into the country. Well, that's not the way to do business in today's world. We need to be more intelligent about how we analyze data, etc. And so we're moving from the gatekeeper's approach to the risk management approach, where we'll be in a better position to separate the high-risk imports or the high-risk passengers and deal with those people and those goods individually, as opposed to trying to deal with all, inspecting everything in great detail. And that too will speed up the process. So I'm going to stop there for the minute, because I don't want to, as I said, I don't want to take up all of the time, and I want to give the others an opportunity to weigh in. So Deputy Collector Walton.
Mr. Walton?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning
Mr.
again.
Connor,
Good morning, Mr. Walton.
Dr. McField, Mrs.
Good
Teresa.
morning.
And to the listening public, I guess the collector gave you a pretty good overview of what our intentions are. I'll speak about in relations to the change management and capacity building within our organization, a bit on the benefits to customs, the benefits to our trading partners, as well as all our internal and external consultation meetings and training, etc. we have done thus far. As the collector stated, our aim was to modernize and reform our customs processes in order to provide a more streamlined business environment. It included reform of our laws and policies and modernization of our business processes. For example, our current amendment to our law in 2016 now requires all shipping agencies via sea to provide to customs a manifest 48 hours prior to arrival in the Cayman Islands. That means that customs will have the opportunity to do pre-arrival checks. We will know cargo that's coming in. We will be able to do selection on who we would like to inspect prior to getting here. And what benefit that brings to the client is that once we have that manifest, it comes in and populates our system. Individuals will be able to start to declare their goods 48 hours even before the ships arrive. So that's a huge increase in trade facilitation. For aircraft, it's wheels off, because the type of business they are, and they have late arrival of cargo, they have late check-in with passengers. So having the passenger manifest and the cargo manifest coming in 48 hours would not be, within their business environment. They have to be able to facilitate their clients. The modernization process included, but it's not limited to, intelligence-led risk management. And the type of environment that customs operate in, you have a business environment where you have risk management, and you have a border security where you have to protect your borders. So the type of methodologies that we use is driven by intelligence. Risk management is driven by intelligence. We also use compliance management in order to do post-audit checks on persons who have already declared goods to customs, but yet we would want to make sure that they're remaining compliant. The post-audit checks mainly apply to our low-risk clients, where we will go out and check their records to make sure they're remaining compliant with customs, because they'll have certain privileges to be able to clear through customs more freely, but we just don't leave them alone. We still pay them a visit and make sure they're remaining compliant. And it's very important to say that although you may be in a low risk, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to remain there. If you If you don't remain compliant with customs, and we find that out, then you could be put back into the high risk.
Okay. I'm going to interrupt you there. We're going to have to take a commercial break at this point in time. When we return, we will continue with our discussions with Mr. Charles Clifford, the Collector of Customs, and his staff members as well. Please stay tuned. For the record, we'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me, Dr. Steve Macfield, Ms. Teresa Pitcairn, Collector of Customs, Mr. Charles Clifford, and his staff, including Mr. Kevin Walton, who is the Deputy Collector of Customs. We're discussing the Customs Modernization Program, and before we went to a commercial break, Mr. Walton was talking about change management and capacity building exercise that is taking place in Customs. So we will allow him to continue at this point in time. Mr. Walton.
Yes, Mr. Connor. Thank you. It's very important to mention that a lot of our capacity building as it relates to the systems that we are introducing is recommended by the WCO, which is a World Customs Organization, and has been used worldwide in their best practices. These sort of methodologies helps customs to balance facilitation and control, not letting go of that control, but using the necessary intelligence-led risk management in order to allow low to medium risk trade to pass our borders more freely, and high risk to get more scrutiny as far as checks are concerned. We learned from our mistakes of implementing a system all at once and trying to go out there and do it. And it caused a lot of challenges for us over the period of time. With that said, this new change management in our IT systems and everything is over a period of 5 phases. The first phase will start on November 1st, 2017. We'll go live. It will begin with the revenue collections portfolio, mainly within the collections sections and customs. The second phase will take it out to our courier section, or parcel post section, as well as inbound. A lot of people don't know what inbound is, but it has to do with all the bonded warehouses we have as far as our alcohol and tobacco imports. We have several bonded warehouses around the island. In addition to that, our fuel depot, where all the fuel is imported, we will then move to that next phase. As we continue, we'll move into border security and enforcement areas, and onto the airport, where passengers eventually will be able to also submit declarations online to customs from hotel room, maybe at the airport or wherever you're at. You could submit your declarations online to customs for the goods that you have over your allowance that you have to pay duties on, as well as any business items that you may be importing, and pay your duties directly to customs online. So when you arrive, you'll have that sort of a smooth transaction, a traveler's experience, and without having to be delayed. Of course, customs will still apply the necessary risk management as far as our checks are concerned. The collector did outline that, we own the system, we manage it, and we operate it. And that's very important, because if we have any tweaks that we need or any changes, we can do so. And over the phases, Mr. Jose will probably explain to you that as we go through one phase, we go on to the next, we look back at the first phase, and whatever mistakes or whatever changes we need to make, we'll do. And this goes on and extends to 2019. So it's 5 phases over the period of time. I have some points I'd like to discuss as it relates to
Go right ahead.
relates to the benefits. First of all, to the traders. You have a very user-friendly environment, which is COLS, which is Customs Online system. That it's quite easy for you to operate and make your declarations to customs, and you could submit it from your comfort of your homes or your offices. It avoids the long waiting time, sitting in customs for hours, waiting on your shipments to be processed. This would allow it to be quickly cleared online, and customs then could do our compliance checks from the system, and this would save you time, especially with your employees not having to remain in customs. They could be at work doing their other duties rather than having to sit down in customs. So it'll save you money there and allow more productivity within your business. The portal will also offer certain information as it relates to our tariff, hidden and codes, and Mr. Godfrey will explain them a little bit more in detail. The benefits to customs allows us to provide a high level of trade facilitation while having that control. It removes customs officers from the desk, allowing them to become more involved in customs work as far as intelligence management, compliance management, gathering and sharing of intelligence, border security, and revenue collection and protection. It eliminates the amount of paper that customs is required for filing. Right now our systems are overloaded with the amount of paper that we have. I think you may have seen the news on Cayman 27 on Friday where I showed you some of the paper that we have. So we are moving to a paperless environment. It provides the platform that we have offers electronic data for finance and statistic reporting, not only for customs but also for the government. At basically the press of a button. So we have a very automated system that allows us to be very innovative in those areas. It also allows us to share information with our stakeholders, key stakeholders like the police, immigration, and other law enforcement agencies that require information that we work along with as it relates to border security.
Okay. Folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Stuart Connor, my co-host, Dr. Steve Macfield, Ms. Teresa Pitcairn, and we have the Collector of Customs, Mr. Charles Clifford, and his staff here with us this morning. We're talking about Customs Modernization Program, things like change management, capacity building, new IT systems, all of that. So please stay tuned. We're going to take a break for our news. When we return, the conversation will continue, so don't change that dial. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Stuart Connor, my co-host, Dr. Steve Macfield, Ms. Teresa Pitcairn. We have in the studio with us the Collector of Customs, Mr. Charles Clifford, Deputy Collector of Customs, whose portfolio is revenue collection, Mr. Kevin Walton. We also have with us Mr. Michael Godfrey, who has responsibility for tariff compliance, and Mr. Jose Montero, who is the IT and business manager. We're talking about the Customs Modernization Program. Mr. Walton has been talking about change management and capacity building. I want to remind our callers that we do have our phone lines open. You can call. We want to limit you to talking about the specific topic that we're discussing this morning. So if you've had experiences in customs, good ones, bad ones, we want to know. We want to hear from you, as well. And any comments that you may have in relation to the new system that is being implemented. I think Ms. Teresa has a few questions as well. She's been receiving some electronic messages from some of our listeners. So, Ms. T, go right ahead.
Right. So this one says, good morning. To launch a new system in the height of the season, and I think the person is referring to the upcoming holiday season, for retailers, especially when training for their customs officers has not yet begun, it will be a painful experience for the retailers needing their goods for this important selling season. And there was a question as to whether any statutory matters are attached to the new custom regime, for example, pensions or healthcare or something like that.
Okay.
Good morning again. Thank you, Teresa. In relation to the last part of that question relating to pensions and health, the answer is no.
Okay.
The first part of your question, we've had that question from others as well. And I know Mr. Walton wanted to speak to that, so I'll give him the mic at this point.
Yes. It's important to understand that this is not an entirely new system to customs. This system what we call the CTSS system, we had it from 1986, and we have taken it from being an infant, and it's now a toddler. So Customs has very good understanding in the use and operation of the system. Further to that, we started consultation and training of our systems from in March of this year. We do have one last training I think is conducting as we hear on the radio this morning, far as the cold system, which is the gateway system, and how you submit your declarations to Customs. Another important thing is to understand that electronic declaration submission is not new. 50 to 60% of our current declarations that are being processed by Customs are electronically submitted. So a lot of our traders already have and used to doing that process. We will be providing, and we have been providing, training to the major stakeholders, the large ones, and various types of brokers, etc. We do have some of the broker agents to finish this week. But another thing is very important. It's just one part of Customs that we implement in this, and this is the collection section. Yes, we know, we are aware of it being high peak time starting mid-November, and it runs for approximately 3 to 6 months into next year. However, with the experiences we have had in the past, and for what we had last year, it was a lot of shipments were held up. Some shipments were not released in time. So we're moving ahead, taking from where we at now, and having 100% online declarations in order to offer that high trade facilitation for the peak season. That's our objective. Another important thing is that we have been receiving a lot of feedback to help us build our systems, help us build our business processes. As I said, we have been training staff. We have completed training with the staff. We just have a few brokers to train this week. And we're now doing pre-registration process, allowing people to come in and register before we actually go live. That registration process requires photo IDs, government-issued ID as far as passport, driver's license, and you also have to complete a form for your registration. In addition to that, businesses, we need to have your business license. As well as any company, we need to know who the director of the company is. The companies would also have to register, and they then give, if they want, super user in their system, they're able to operate it and give user who they want to be users of their system. But it's very important to understand that the users of the system also needs to be registered with Customs by providing us with their government-issued IDs. Because we've had in the past where we have declarations coming in from the company, but we don't know who's submitting on behalf of the company. So it's very important for us to have those. The traders, brokers, and couriers, they will be able to register their own, submit those registrations, because they have many clients that they clear goods on behalf. They will be able to register those persons, and persons will then issue them with the right of agent, and with that we'll be able to streamline that registration process a lot easier. As we continue, we will continue to consult with our stakeholders, our trading partners, and to receive the necessary feedbacks. And we were asking the public to be as patient with us, but we are here to make sure that during the peak season you will have the necessary trade facilitation you do deserve in order to have your goods out of Customs and cleared before the busy season starts.
Speaking of public consultation, in terms of where you're at now, I would imagine that you have gone through some public consultation to guide you in terms of the direction that you want to go. So based on what you want to do now, how much public buy-in do you have on this, especially in terms of your frequent users of Customs?
Well, I mean, I think that we have good acceptance of what we're proposing to do, and good buy-in from our stakeholders. Of course, there are always going to be people who are going to say, well, this is a change. It's going to take a little getting used to. We don't like change. Generally speaking, people don't like to change because it becomes a bit uncomfortable. But I think it's also clear that our customers are demanding better service in terms of the time that they have to wait for goods to be cleared, etc. And so that message also came through loud and clear to us, that we need to be more efficient with how we do business. And this is part of that process. So yes, there will be some resistance anytime you try to implement change, particularly if it's change related to the culture of an organization or anything that impacts a customer. You are going to have some resistance to that change. But we sit here today confident that once this plan is fully rolled out and implemented, that the customers will ultimately reap the benefits, which will be a much more efficient process with clearing their goods. So we're asking at this point for them to be patient with us as we go through this implementation phase, understanding that it is an incremental process. It's not all going to be done at once, and that allows us to essentially work out the kinks as we go through the system and to make improvements along the way. As I said from the beginning, and it's important that we continue to highlight this, we have total control over this system, so we can tweak it as we go along. Will there be mistakes? Yes, of course. There always are mistakes when you go down the road with a change process. But we are well positioned to correct those issues for the benefit of our customers. I'm mindful, OC, that Kevin and I have been talking for,
Yes.
from the time we got here this morning, and Mr. Godfrey and Mr. Montero haven't had an opportunity, so I want to give you an opportunity to engage them at this point.
Certainly. Let's start with Mr. Michael Godfrey. Good morning again, sir.
Morning. Yes, my role at Customs involves Customs tariff compliance, and a critical component to the whole custom program is the customs tariff. We're using what's referred to as the harmonized tariff system, or simply the HS. For those who may not know, the harmonized system is a 6-digit internationally standardized system that is used to classify all goods that are traded globally. This system was developed back in the late 80s by the World Customs Organization for the use by customs organizations worldwide. As it stands right now, the Cayman Islands uses what we refer to as a hybrid version of the harmonized system at a 8-digit level. That's 2 additional digits over what is the standard harmonized code.
Is there a reason for using 8 as opposed to 6?
There is a reason, and I'll get to that in just a minute. But even at the 8-digit level that we have been using, the variety of products that we import into the island were collapsed into more general headings, and as such, were not comparable with other international classifications. So we recognize the need to keep abreast with our trade partners by modernizing the current system and adapting to the full harmonized system and use it as it was meant to be used. While it's a convenience in terms of grouping similar products together, from a data perspective, it's basically a nightmare because we cannot keep track of exactly what's coming into the country. And with global trade, it has evolved to the point now that there is a need to know exactly what is coming into the country for a variety of reasons. This harmonized system is used to classify over 98% of the merchandise that is traded on a regular basis. So with that in mind, we set about to upgrade the current tariff to a more comprehensive tariff, which contains a lot more details that will allow us to properly classify goods. This is critically important in our whole intelligence-led risk management approach to doing business within customs, because it will allow us to specifically target items that we may have certain concerns over even before they arrive here. And we can, sorry, lost my train of thought there for a second. What we looked at when we put together this tariff is to design it so that it is more user-friendly for the importers. And we did so by the inclusion of certain words or terms that are common to the local community. For example, you may see in the tariff motor vehicles. Most people wouldn't call them that. They refer to them as cars or trucks. Mm-hmm. So little words like that, words like sheetrock, which in the tariff you may find on the gypsum board. Okay. But there's not very many people that would know that. So we've taken the tariff and try to include a lot of words that are
localized.
That are localized, yeah. And we felt that this would greatly assist persons in their classification of goods. Now, many people are not quite sure how to properly classify goods. But at Customs, we welcome you to give us a call if you have any issues as to how to properly identify what goods that you're importing, and we'll be happy to guide you as to how to go about the process.
Okay. We're going to take a commercial break now. When we return, we are also going to hear from Mr. Jose Montero, who is in charge of the IT, and he's also the business manager as well. So please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. We're discussing Customs Modernization Program, change in management and capacity building. We're talking about their IT systems as well. I am a strong proponent for in-house IT management, especially in government, because government does have the expertise. The computer services department, well staffed in terms of their ability to develop systems. I've seen it done in the immigration department in the early 1980s. I think immigration came online in 1983, and they have continued to do so. When you use outside consultants, outside companies, you sometimes run the risk of being held hostage by them as well, sometimes requiring substantial sums of monies just simply for changes and stuff. So it is good to know that the Customs Department has their in-house IT and business manager as well. He is Mr. Jose Montero, and we're going to ask him to give us an overview now of the Customs system, IT system. Mr. Montero.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connor, and everyone here. Protocol established. Good morning, everyone. My first take on this matter, as far as the technology is concerned, the Customs Department, as the collector has just spoken about earlier this morning, is something that was already in use at the Customs Department. It appeared in the 1980s, and it was built by our Computer Services Department. Now, those engineers that built it back in those days, pretty much most left. There was a big migration at some point. Mm-hmm. But we still have expertise in-house, and we're hoping to lead the charity where local-based Caymanians will come up and help establish a more long-term maturity around these systems. Now, as you're aware, we have a procured another system that was very much, as you said, came out of the resourcefulness of the then administration of customs, along with external consultants, to have a direction. And it has been done. It's nothing new. It was done many a times over the years. The thing is, when you are at the table with international consultants, you must be able to understand partly what is on the table. And customs have learned this lesson in that they must have, if you deal with technology, you must have a technologist with you at the table. Deal with a mechanic, you must be able to, obviously you want to trust that mechanic, but obviously you probably would have had someone that would have introduced you to that mechanic and help you build that trust over the years. This very same light is no different. It's, you're not spending 1 cent. And as such, customs have thought long and hard about where it stands now currently, and has seen that the older system that's in-house can be brought to provide the necessary services. Of course, it would need to be improved, upgraded, and brought forward to the point of which we could literally take on global trade. This is the intention, because the system we procured, stepping back to the, what we call in technical terms, the proprietary system, we have very little to any control of it at all. The customs had to, it's very much like every other organization, has to adapt to that operation, had to attempt to make do with what wasn't there, and had very little control of which way they could go with the system, which is a very important thing, which we don't think about in organizations. When we need, an organization needs a chart its course, it feels perhaps the immobilizer is technology, and simply just purchasing anything off the shelf will do its bidding. But time and time again, we come back to the same thing. We have to understand that technology is only as good as the business process it maps. Such like a car. You choose any car, a small Toyota. You want to make it faster or want to save fuel. The only thing in the car that makes a difference is the timing for the computer. It's only the computer controls that timing. But the engine drives the car. Whether you can make it faster or make it more economy-wise, it's the engine that's going to help you determine that. Why would we just buy a computer, switch, and expect that to chart our journey? We need to look at the engine. The engine for us as organizations is our business processes, our procedures, our policies that decide how things should go. And via our vision and in the approach we streamline our organizations with, technology is meant to be bolted onto that to ensure that takes place. So that small Toyota you have, you can take, I don't know if you can take the engine out and put it in a truck to make it function the way you'd like to, but this timing can work with some reprogramming into the truck.
So you have your in-house analyst programmers and now as well. I know you normally would bring an analyst in to look at your business process to see how it works. They'll talk to staff.
That's right.
Get an idea of what it is all about, and then go and write a program based on that. You have that all in-house now as well?
Well, we are actually, yes, we have it in-house because I'm an engineer. We also have it at Computer Services. I'm a forbearer, and we are working with many different governmental groups within the Cayman Islands government to bring to bear all the technology we need. And we're not reinventing the wheel. That's important. So what does that mean on the ground? The technology itself, like I was saying before, is older technology. Customs is currently using this technology downstairs in its collections and department, and in the collections office at the airport to actually process large importers. We're actually using it to process large importers. The problem we have with that system is, firstly, nobody can submit from an external point to that system because it is literally a basic recording environment for us to record declarations and so on. But those declarations are restrained in many ways. They do not comply with the harmonized tariff code as it stands. They only use the 4 digits. So as of this implementation phase coming in at the end of this month, 1st of November, that system now will be brought into its fullness to accept the entire tariff code standard that Mr. Godfrey's just addressed. That's quite a facelift. So that it reflects the fact that we'll have another this other set of information from past trade that we have to capture and finalize into the next phase so that we can make that transition that is very necessary to facilitate our internal declaration purposes.
Okay, we have about 5 minutes before we go to another break. Dr. McPhail, do you have any question that you want to pose to the collector or his staff?
I would like to ask Mr. Clifford. Mr. Clifford, I would like to ask Mr. Clifford. Mr. Clifford well knows that my opinion, and I stick to my opinion over the many years, that customs should be seized with the border controls. Not only because they're very efficient, but because they're a homogenized group of Caymanians who are dedicated to protect their country. And they work very hard to do this, and I really respect them. I think it's one of the organizations that I really, really respect. And I've had the privilege to work with Mr. Clifford before, when he was the minister in charge of tourism in the airport, and he's very, very he's a very, very professional person, and I like professionalism. I thrive on the professionalism. I don't like mediocre people, that's for sure. And so I'm so impressed with what I've heard this morning, and I would like to ask Mr. Clifford this. Mr. Clifford and your deputy and your backup staff or IT staff said that your modernized custom functions are driven by intelligent gathering. And so I want to ask you, if that is so, how does that apply to the physical border controls as far as the intrusion of people, illicit drugs coming through, illicit cargo, simply like what we have seen some time ago, roosters for fighting, and guns and other things. How does that apply? How does that apply to border controls in those terms?
Thank you very much, Dr. McPhail, and we appreciate your very kind words about the Customs Department, and I certainly appreciate your kind words about me as well. So to answer your question directly, we have very robust relationships with other law enforcement agencies across the region, and also regional associations that lend themselves to sharing of information and intelligence so that we can be more efficient with our border protection activities. Now, is there room for improvement? Of course there is. And as we move through this transition from the gatekeepers approach to the risk management approach, we need to be more strategic with our deployment of our vessels. We now have air support as well. And we need to invest more in the technology that we need to surveil our coastline. Islands are unique in the sense that when you compare them to larger countries, they have larger budgets, they have more than one law enforcement agency, and yes, we have more than one here as well. But if you take some of the larger countries, they will have one agency that's just dealing with firearms, one that's dealing with local policing, one that's a coast guard, and so on. But in Cayman, the majority of the law enforcement functions are the responsibility of the police, customs, and immigration. And I'm happy to say that more recently, and this is something I was pushing for from the time I took up this position, we have had a lot more collaboration between those three agencies. I think we have a different approach now from the police, and I'm happy to say that they have embraced the level of collaboration that we wanted to see. Immigration has always been on board, and you would have seen from local reports in the media that there have been a lot more joint operations with police, customs, and immigration recently. And these have been very successful operations, resulting in the seizure of hundreds of pounds of drugs coming into the country and firearms. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is exactly what we're talking about in terms of technology and making sure that we have the information available to us so that we can look at certain documents, whether that's in relation to cargo or passengers, and we can say before the aircraft arrive in Cayman or before the ship arrives in Cayman, these are the high-risk parcels, or these are the high-risk passengers. These are the people we want to take a second look at, and the others can essentially go through. You would have seen this approach used more recently and implemented and used more recently in the Miami International Airport, where you go to a customs border protection officer. They clear you from the point of view of you coming into their country as a foreign immigrant. And basically after that, you collect your suitcase and your baggage, and you go straight through, unless they have an interest in you, in which case they will separate you and do a secondary search. Well, that's the direction we're moving in, using technology. And it's something that I'm excited about. I never did, certainly in recent times, buy into the view that we needed to stop everyone, ask them the exact same questions. Because what happens is it's so monotonous that if you pay attention to, and this is not unique to Cayman, this is anywhere in the world that's still using this approach. If you pay attention to the officers after 20 minutes or so of asking the same questions to the passengers, to every passenger coming through, they're not even listening to the answers anymore. It's almost like a conveyor belt. So it's not the most effective way of doing business. We can do things a lot smarter than we've been doing them. What I can say is that we have a group of customs officers that are very dedicated, very hardworking, very eager to learn about new technology and new methodologies. And so this is the direction we're going to be going in. It's a process. It's a transition. It is incremental. It's not going to happen overnight, but it is going to happen. So that's perhaps a long answer to what you
Great
asked.
answer.
That's a good answer. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Clifford. Folks, please stay tuned. For the record, we'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome to For the Record. We have about 5 minutes before we go to our 9 o'clock headline news. I just want to remind our listeners that if you want to call in, you can call in on our toll-free number, 1-800-534-8255. You can also call on 949-8037 and 949-6990, or you can email us at For the Record. That is one word, For the Record, at candw.ky. Prefer to hear your questions and your comments now rather than hearing them on Wednesday morning on For the Record. And Mr. Clifford and his crew who are not here on Wednesday, and then you have expectations, of us to get that information for you. So please, if you want to, take advantage of the opportunity now to ask questions or to make comments in that regard. I want to, again, because this is a program designed for the Customs Department to lay out their program to you, I am going to defer again to the Collector of Customs so that he can get back on track in terms of what he wants to present to us.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Connor. I think, and we're mindful that people may not have been listening, some people may not have been listening in the earlier part of the program, so I just want to sort of reiterate why we're here and what we're trying to achieve. We're engaged now in a customs modernization process where we're looking at our business processes and updating them and making them more modern in order to better facilitate trade and passengers. So we have had a system that we're using, an IT system that we're using that's created a lot of customer service issues for us. So we're making a transition now in this first phase of the change process to a new IT platform, one that would better lend itself to a more efficient online process, ultimately lead to a paperless environment, ultimately lead to your ability to make online payments. But one of the important things we want to say to our customers is that in order to utilize this system, you're going to have to register to do it, and we would need some form of identification in order to do that. But it's a one-time registration. And once you get that behind you, then anytime you have imports coming in after that, you can do all your declarations, etc., online from the comfort of your office or home, and simply wait then for an email from customs saying that your goods have been cleared for release. You can come and make the payment and collect your goods, or that your goods have been selected for inspection and you need to come and deal with that issue. So it reduces the amount of time that you would have to normally spend in the customs hall. And also more, or perhaps just as important, is that this system is an upgrade to a system that we've been using for from the early days that was sort of, in some respects, kind of shelved in relation to some of our operations. So we're using that as the basis for this new platform, which is an enhancement to the old system that we will have total control of. So we will be able to tweak and to make improvements along the way as we need to, without incurring substantial costs because the program is owned by someone else. That's not the case here. So again, we're asking for our customers to just bear with us as we move through this change process. Change is never easy. It does involve some challenges, but just bear in mind that it is going to ultimately lead to a more efficient processing system at customs and will reduce your waiting time within our customs hall.
Very quickly before we go to the break, if I'm the first time importer of, let's say, a deportee from Japan, a deportee vehicle from Japan, tell me what I would be faced with in terms of the things that I need to do for customs. My first time I'm bringing something in. I'm not a licensed importer. I don't have a trade and business license, just as an individual.
Right. So you're going to have to register, as I said. I'm going to ask Mr. Walton to get into more detail on this. But you're going to have to come into the customs collections hall to register as an importer in order to clear that vehicle. Now, we spoke earlier about risk management and how we're going to deal with these issues. I think it's important to note, and I'll just, I don't think this is anything confidential, and there's no need for it to be. Imports particularly from Asia, tend to be high-risk imports because we see, and it's a fact because we've prosecuted cases, we've implemented administrative fines, we see a substantial amount of fraudulent invoices coming from the Asian region. So they're high-risk imports. So that brings with it certain challenges. And I just wanted to point that out. But yes, registration is going to be necessary, but I'll just ask Mr. Walton to go into more detail.
We're going to take a break first, and then Mr. Walton can elaborate on that as soon as we return. Please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. We're talking with the Collector of Customs, Mr. Charles Clifford, and his staff. The discussion centers around Customs Modernization Program, change management and capacity building, IT systems. Before we have Mr. Walton answer the one question, I think Ms. Teresa wanted to add something along with that as well. Go right ahead, Ms. T.
Yeah, thanks very much, OC. But this is in connection to what Mr. Clifford was talking about just now as to whether or not we're going to have a help desk, because this is a preliminary step that you're taking on into building something with excellence. And can I also build on what Dr. Macfield mentioned about being honored to see 4 Cayman? And let me preface what I'm about to say so that I don't offend anyone. This is just me being Caymanian. This is just me loving being Caymanian, and indeed loving being surrounded by 4 Caymanian people who are professionals and who are taking this leap into security and risk management with our customs on a level that far supersedes, and may I say, the Caribbean as a first step. So we're going to take over the Caribbean and be number 1, and then we're going to take another step to be number 1 worldwide. And I am honored to have this opportunity to speak to you guys in that way. And the other question that I had was, and I hope I didn't upset anybody, because this is just being pro Caymanian, not being anti anyone, just being pro Caymanian and bigging us up. And the other question that I had dealt with cybersecurity.
Yes, as far as the cybersecurity, I'd rather Mr. Jose Montero speak on that. But if you'd like me to just continue off of what the collector was explaining about the imports.
And the help desk. Yeah.
Right.
And the help desk.
Yes, the imports as it relates to someone first coming into customs, you have to be registered with customs, and that registration is one time. You bring your government ID, be it be a driver's license, a passport, you complete a form, and it's a matter of minutes and we register you. We actually have it down to 7 minutes when you're registered and you're out of there. We have a help desk set up there that officers will be there to greet you and to get you registered there and then. In addition to that, for persons that don't understand how to use our COLS system, which is a customs online system, the gateway to our in-house system, we will train you in-house there and then. It is a matter of minutes. It's a very user-friendly system.
Good.
Very, very, very user-friendly. We have already moved and started to train a lot of our major traders and their agents, as well as the brokers and couriers as we go along. But we will train people as they come in. We have kiosks set up in our office for that purpose. As we continue to make the changes, we can also start implement a help desk where you actually call into customs, one number, you press for help, and we will be there to answer the necessary questions for you.
But you don't have us waiting online for a long time.
No. That is why we have an automated system where you just press 1 for help, press 2 for airport, press 3 for collections, for example. It'll be a very user-friendly system as well. So that's part of our new initiatives as we go along, because now the calls are going throughout customs. Sometimes they're not answered, and when you do get answered, they're inconsistent answers that you get. So we are very much aware of that, and customs management has looked at that, and we've decided to that become a part of our change. And it's very important to understand that come November 1st, all declarations, customs will be done electronically through our collections area. However, you can continue to do your normal clearances through the parcel post, through the courier section, through our inbound section, through the airport as it is. We're going in phases. We're taking steps as we go, baby steps as we go. As I explained earlier, the system that we have is an infant. We have now created it as a toddler, and it will become an adolescent, and then it will eventually become an adult when it will become Customs Information Management System, what we will call SIMS. As we go along, we're asking, as the collector said, for as much patience, but we welcome feedback, because that will help us to design our business processes and make this system a success. I think Ms. Teresa already mentioned our aim is to go paperless, and in addition to that, to become the most efficient and effective custom agency worldwide, because we have already passed the region as far as the Caribbean. We're now going to another level. As far as cybersecurity.
If I could just interject a minute,
Sure, sir. Yes, go
before
ahead.
Jose answers the cybersecurity point, I just wanted to thank Ms. Teresa for her kind comments as well. And just to repeat what I had said at the beginning of the program in relation to the registration process, so that individuals, particularly people who are not frequent importers, would understand that the registration process isn't new either. You have to do it under the current system, but we do have new compliance and regulatory requirements that we need to comply with with respect to money laundering and terrorist financing and things such as that. So even under the current system, there would have been a need for us to enhance our registration process in terms of knowing who our customers are. So I didn't want people to think that this is a new process. It's just that we have to do it for this new system. We can't migrate the data from one to the next. And even if we could, and by the way, we can't do that because of the control issues that I spoke about earlier, or lack thereof, lack of control. But even if we could, there is a need for us to add information in relation to importers so that we understand who we're dealing with as customers. I just wanted to underscore that point.
And just before we go to cyber security issues, if I'm using a customs broker me as the individual, there's nothing that I have to do.
No, in that case, the onus is then on the broker or the courier to make sure that they know who their customers are.
Yes.
Because there may come a point in time that we will demand certain information from them, and they must have it available.
Okay.
So if you think about it from a practical point of view, it really wouldn't be practical for us to try to do that ourselves, because on a daily basis you have couriers who are bringing in goods for hundreds of people. So it would basically create a bottleneck in the system that would be unacceptable. So it's one of the issues we looked at very early in terms of designing this program, but the onus has to be on the couriers and the brokers.
Okay.
The
So
couriers
there-
actually, sorry,
Sorry.
the couriers will actually register their their clients
Right.
for that purpose, and they will then require appointment of agent, which would then pass the
Right.
onus on
Ah.
onto the courier,
Got you.
which is in accordance with our law.
Mr. Montero.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, OC. And thank you, Ms. Teresa. On the topic of cybersecurity, now, I'll try not to speak too quickly because I do get very technical very quickly, but we'll try to make it simple. But on the topic of cybersecurity, what we have been doing on the system level, we have built this system from the ground up. You have to understand. The system has been like a train. The many carts on a train. They're built from the ground up to be completely physically separate. And on that basis, so what we're looking at is not just one system or one program, as it were, but multiple systems communicating in sync with each other through a protocol that is completely secured here within our central computing services. In addition to that, on those layers, we are then introducing layers of security and piloting a number of security initiatives along with the central government, including the e-government unit, implementing international standards across cybersecurity. As we all know, cybersecurity is a very concerning threat that Cayman, just like many other jurisdictions, must face and deal with. But it's not a matter of putting in one system and you're through. You know, cybersecurity is in such a situation that it only takes time for a hacker to do something, and it's why we literally layer upon layers of security, and we're continually testing those layers to ensure that they are always effective. Now, so as such, we use that same thought when we approach all the other areas of the system itself. So, you know, if I can extend this topic on cybersecurity to talking about the rest of the system. So the mere fact that in this first phase, as we address the registration and declaration, excuse me, of importers, that we're looking at holistically the picture of making a system that is segmented so that those people declaring goods can literally talk directly to the customs officers on the other side. So there's two physical systems also on that light, very similar to, you know, the way we handle cybersecurity for the declaration bit. When an importer submits his declaration now coming in the new system after November 1st, it's going to be sent directly into another system that will allow customs to directly address their situation. And basically, the whole back and forth process, it'd be basically an interaction, like an appointment-based situation where when they submit their electronic declaration, this improved system internally, the customs officer can see that request in a queue, much like you'd see in a fast food joint, and they can action it literally as it comes in, and move that around and do the necessary action. Now, before this time, this was before November 1st, this is not possible. Not with the current implementations. There's just no system like that for customs we know about, even internationally. And being able to address them, these requests on the fly, and then the officers are able to engage those requests. Basically say, well, are there enough information provided, and directly address that request right in the technology, providing the feedback directly back to the importer in their environment, in their IT environment, that same Coles environment we're talking about, customs online, and they can respond. So they
Almost in real time.
Yes, they're back and forth. So it's going to be like you're almost having a conversation through the internet with your customs officers.
Okay. Folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Dorit Connor. My guest, along with my two co-hosts, Dr. Steve McField and Ms. Teresa Pitcairn, Collector of Customs, Mr. Charles Clifford, Deputy Collector, Mr. Kevin Walton, I'm sorry. We also have with us Mr. Michael Godfrey and Mr. Jose Montero. We're on our last commercial break now. When we return, we will have a wrap-up segment as well. Please stay tuned For the Record. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. We're talking about the Customs Modernization Program, change management, and capacity building with the Collector of Customs, Mr. Charles Clifford, and his staff. This last leg of the show now, we really want to give as much information as possible. We've been given a lot of information. We know people are listening. In the absence of calls, sometimes a talk show, you measure the activity by the amount of calls that you get, and there are times that you measure the activity by the number of calls you don't get. When we don't get a whole lot of calls, we know that people are listening intently to the show. Now, we talk about being proactive, and there is some advice that the collector would like to give to our listening audience. We've talked about the fact that we're coming up to the business season. There are some persons who send in questions in relation to why go through this program now when we're getting to the high season. But there are things that you, our listening audience, as a customer, can do to alleviate any hitches, any delays later on. Mr. Clifford.
Thank you very much, Mr. Connor. Yes, as we indicated, we're going to be rolling this new system out in phases beginning November 1st in our collection section. What I want to suggest to importers more than anything else is that if you know you're going to be importing goods for Thanksgiving or before Thanksgiving or for Christmas, don't wait until the goods are on island to come and register. If you have 10 minutes, pop into the customs hall, bring your ID with you, get the registration process behind you so that once your goods are on the way, then you can begin to complete the process online, which means you won't have to spend hours sitting in our hall waiting for your goods to be cleared. You will be able to do it online, as I said earlier in the program, and wait for an email from us letting you know that the goods have been released and you can come and pay and collect the goods, or that they've been selected for inspection. So that's one of the key things I wanted to get across in the final couple of minutes. I know that the others on the panel who are here with me would like to also say a few words as well as we get to the close out of the program. But I want to get this in early just in case I don't get to come back to the mic. Deputy Collector Walton has been the project lead on this, and I want to take the opportunity to sincerely thank him. He has worked really hard on this. We have made substantial progress, and there are other members of the team. Of course, there's a change management team. We don't have time to name everybody, but we want to thank everyone for their contributions, for taking us through this process. Jose is here with us, and so is Michael, and they have played substantial roles in the change process as well. So I wanted to take the opportunity to thank them, but more broadly to thank all of the customs officers who have gone through the training, who have embraced this new program, and not just the customs officers, but our support staff. We have quite a bit of administrative staff that support us, and this is an integrated operation. It takes everyone to make it work.
While you still have the mic, can we talk a little bit more about staffing? Any challenges as far as staffing is concerned, the ability to attract young, talented Caymanians to the customs service as well?
No, I'm pleased to say we haven't had any challenges. I mean, in our last recruitment drive, we had over 300 applications from Caymanians and over 300 from expatriates as well. So we were dealing with upward of 600 applications in our last recruitment drive. So we haven't had an issue recruiting staff. I mean, it's quite a robust process that you have to go through, including the vetting process and all of that stuff. So yeah, we've also had interest from other law enforcement agencies, and in the last recruitment drive of the 14 people that we hired, we had 5 former police officers in that group. But you know, the police is a partner agency, so we have to be, I suppose, really strategic about how we deal with that aspect of things, because we believe that there are pros and cons to all law enforcement organizations. And there may be some customs officers who are interested in the police service for particular reasons. And so you will find that staff may go back and forth between agencies, and we just need to be strategic about how we manage that. But the short answer is no, we haven't had any issues with that.
Mr. Godfrey, as we see the Cayman Islands continue to grow and grow, more development taking place, obviously you see increases in the amount of revenue that customs collects as a result of this development. How challenging has it been in relation to tariff collections?
Well, as I mentioned early on, the most difficult part is looking at data in which we don't have enough details to make proper decisions. But I think that the revision of the current tariff will help to alleviate that problem. I think with the new tariff, we'll be able to make better informed decisions going forward. So I don't anticipate the problems that we've had in the past in terms of monitoring the goods and the type of goods that's been coming onto the island. And before we move on, I'd like to address a question that you had early on that I forgot to address, and that was why the Cayman Islands uses 8 digits instead of 6. Well, every country is allowed to assign its own coding system, but only after that 6-digit level that's assigned by the WCO, and that is to address any national concerns that the country may have in terms of a particular product. If you want to, for instance, monitor certain chemicals that may be coming in onto the island, it's very important, that we monitor these different types of products, because there's been an emergence of new products over the past couple of years that now has to be accounted for. So it's continuously evolving, the tariff, and we will be updating it on a regular basis to reflect those changes in international trade.
Okay, we have one caller. Like I told Mr. Clifford, we'd probably get one at about 9:25. I'm about a minute off from that. But that caller, we were going to ask him to be brief, because had they called a little bit earlier, they would have gotten more airtime as well. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning,
wonderful
sir.
program today, sir. Good morning to all your guests. I won't try to call them all by name.
Thank
and
you.
also your host.
Good morning.
A grave concern of mine is the continued destruction by our Legislative Assembly members and Cabinet of our tax system, which has been based on a consumer base where you pay for services, fees, and imports. And they're slowly eroding that completely and destroying it. of concern to me is how much money are we actually losing through the customs collection that would have been collected had it not been that we're giving subsidies to these companies and people. And I'm wondering if I've asked this question of the financial ministry, and they're trying to say they don't know how much we're giving away. And I'm wondering from the customs standpoint, as you collect your duty, when you do and you say this is tailor-made or computer system, if you could start to track, well, if we had been collecting the normal duty on this import, the blocks, the doors, or whatever it is that we're bringing in, here's the amount of duty we would have collected, so that we now know the cost, what's the benefit we're getting for that, and should we continue to give these subsidies to millionaires and billionaires? That's the question. Will you be able to track that easily, being as we control the buttons and the way the whole software system operates?
Thank you very much, caller, for that. So he wants to know whether or not you will be able to track. So we won't talk about the government policy in relation to subsidies, but the ability to track. How do you know when someone has been exempted or there has had a reduction in import duty?
Well, OC, first of all, let me thank you for extricating me from that policy discussion. It's not something that I am inclined to get involved in at this point. But the short answer is yes, we will be able to track this a lot easier now. We can track it now, but I think it'll be a lot easier in this new platform or on this new platform. But as far as the sort of specific comment that the caller made in relation to not being able to get this information, concessions are managed by the Minister of Finance, so that I would have to direct him to the Minister of Finance, which is the ministry that we report to. Mm-hmm. But the answer to the question is yes, we would be able to track it.
Okay. We haven't heard some final comments from Mr. Montero yet. Mr. Montero?
Yes. In relation to the tracking and non-tracking of trades, in terms of, if I could step back a moment and help to address with Mr. Godfrey. In addition to the fact that we have enhanced the tariff codes for the region. So in other words, just like Mr. Godfrey was saying, you know when you look for motor vehicles, you don't have to type in motor vehicle. You can type in car or truck, as we were saying earlier. But all of these enhancements obviously means that locally we have to set up an administration for that, because it's very country specific. We have to, so these are part of the plumbing, which probably will extend the system towards those lights, and in addition to that, the areas of tracking and dealing with, concessions and so on, by extension. Those are the areas we've factored in those things now at this point, but going forward in future, because if I could step back also a moment, currently, a lot of these things are tracked, but in many parts, perhaps, of customs, which is no fault of customs, there can be manual parts of it that is done because of how the operation works, and other parts which are computerized, because the current system in-house does not allow that to happen. So now, moving forward, as customs now, in a phase situation, get on board with one system at all ends of it, the customs operation, we can all now see how customs can now be able to obviously report, but not just report. We'll wait for the end of the year when an annual report can come out, or quarterly, where we can see it in real time. Customs can look forward to that. Their executive officers can look forward to a technology dashboard, much like the speedometer in your car. Mm-hmm. And obviously, in addition to that, the reports are necessary according to specific details for performance in the departments. You can actually see how well we're responding to requests. Many different areas that helps with labor, manpower, seeing perhaps the necessary skill sets they'll need now. And perhaps at this point, because in a system way, the way we're approaching it from IT, we're looking at it as an integration exercise. Mm-hmm. We're talking about multiple systems, and even patching into those systems that customs uses for scanning. Some of those things will become assets. come feeding right into our systems and provide and populate that for intelligence to feed the officers on the ground as they work to vet these things. So we're talking about a very comprehensive approach.
Okay. Mr. Clifford and Mr. Walton, I can't let you leave without asking you, how are you looking forward to the expanded digs at the airport in terms of the space that you will have there, and when we're looking at the date of completion for that, if you know?
Well, as you know, OC, thank you for that question. The project at the airport is a phased one as well. So the arrivals hall will be completed towards the end of November, perhaps middle of December. In terms of when it becomes operational is a different question. I think that's likely to be sometime in January, because once it's completed, then you got to get furniture in and all that kind of stuff. So I think we're probably looking at January 2018 when the arrivals hall will become operational. We're very much looking forward to it because, as you know, all airports have peak periods. Dr. Macfield will be familiar with this. He served on the board before. And so the peak period issue is not unique to Roberts International Airport. Pardon me. It's something that's common to all airports. So we're looking forward to that. We need the extra space. We'll be able to process passengers more efficiently. And there are other aspects of the operation that we can't get into publicly for obvious reasons. But I think it also lends itself to us being much more efficient and effective on the border protection side of things.
Okay, I want to thank you again for being here, Mr. Clifford, with your staff. We want to wish you all the best in your modernization and change management and capacity building with customs. We look forward to it. If we get any complaints on this side, we will certainly transmit them to you when people call in here, because we know that while you have staff and resources, you don't have a staff that you can dedicate to listening to For the Record every morning to hear what complaints may come in relation to customs. But we appreciate thank you very much for that, and we know that our listening and our viewing audience really appreciate getting this information for you. Folks, I want to thank you for allowing Radio Cayman, and by extension For the Record, into your homes, into your vehicles as you traverse the busy roads of the Cayman Islands, into your places of work, whether it be an office cubicle or if you're working in the outdoors. I also want to thank my two co-hosts, Ms. Teresa Pitcairn, Dr. Steve Macfield. I want to remind you that we are our brothers and our sisters keepers. There is always someone out there who's less fortunate than we are, and I ask you to extend a helping hand to them. If you can't do that, then I suggest you donate to a worthy charity, because we always want to consider those who need, not necessarily those who want. I say to you, have a great day. Continue to support your radio station, Radio Cayman. Join Sterling Dwayne Banks at 12 noon for Talk Today. Have a great day, and as usual, we ask the good Lord to bless these three beautiful, wonderful Cayman Islands.
Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record.